All right. Well, welcome everybody, and welcome to the Leading for Excellence series brought to you by CAUFP and Matrix 360. For those of you who are joining us for the very first time, my name is Meryl Africa, and I'm the current president of the association. CAUFP is a member-based resource organization that has been around for over the course of 20 plus years and forms a link between corporate Canada and the Black community through a number of initiatives that focus around networking, professional development workshops, recruitment activities such as our upcoming marquee event, which is the Youth Summit that's happening on September 12th, as well as through thought leadership events such as the one that we're hosting today. The event that we're hosting today is really in partnership with Matrix 360, who is our educational partner. And the premise of this event is really to showcase the journeys of leaders related to their success, their challenges, and the lessons learned, in addition to delivering impactful insights on the topics that are instrumental to the business landscape. The purpose is also focused on education through story sharing, where we solidify the human connection to the business success. CAUFP and Matrix 360 strongly believe in spotlighting Black stories, as we know that in most cases, our stories are very rarely shared. We also know that the stories are powerful and have an ability to influence the way in which we live, we learn, we work, we play, and engage with our surroundings. What is often not shared is just how we navigate these hidden obstacles that we face along the way. We are so honored to have a candid conversation with one of Canada's most powerful leaders in workplace strategy and human resources, and also the first female CEO that we've actually had come out and speak with us today. So I'd like to welcome Jaqui Parchment from the CEO of Mercer Canada. Just to give you guys a little bit of background on Jaqui, she currently leads over 1,000 employees from coast to coast, where she empowers them to provide industry-leading services and innovative solutions to clients across health, wealth, career, businesses to foster company growth. Before she became the CEO of Mercer, she led 500 employees in Toronto for nearly 2 years as a senior consultant in the wealth business. And prior to that, she was the head of investment business for Canada. Jaqui has over 30 years of experience in retirements and savings investments. And she also is a strong supporter of nonprofit organizations where she assists youth and new immigrants to Canada. She's formerly the Canadian chair for Women at Mercer and When Women Thrives, and she's also has a passion for diversity. She's a frequent speaker on issues related to women in finance, as well as women in the workplace, and sits on a number of investment committees related to pension and endowment funds. She's also a graduate of Waterloo, so if there are any Waterloo folks on the line, make sure you send her a message to let her know that her alumni is present, and where she graduated with a bachelor's degree in mathematics and actuarial science. She's an associate for the Society of Actuaries and a CFA chartered holder. Joining Jaqui is a moderator as well as corporate advisory board member, Fernando. Chandran is a true collaborator who believes strongly in the power of diversity and equity. As the founder and managing partner of Matrix 360, Chandran has built an advisory platform for talent and workplace strategy for the private sector over the last 2 decades. The Matrix 360 brand is an extension of Chandran's core principles, and his mission is really to, his mission in business is guided by his people-centric approach to build and celebrate folks and the belonging in outcome. Forgive me, guys. It's a mouthful. Chandran does so much for the community with regards to advocating for diversity and for women, and making sure that we have equity within corporate Canada. He's achieved countless awards for his work focused on eradicating systemic racism and sexism. You can learn more about Chandran by sending him a message or a request to connect on LinkedIn. And if you haven't done so already, download the Matrix 360 Anti-Racism Roadmap for everyday action. With that said, I'd love to introduce to you our 2 panelists, Fernando and Jaqui Parchment. Thank you.
I should probably unmute myself. There we go.
Great to be
Hello.
Here.
Yes. Thank you for
Hello.
Hello, Jaqui.
Hello, Chandran. And thank you so much for the glowing introduction and the opportunity to be here. I'm excited to talk to you today, Chandran.
That's perfect. That's perfect. So first of all, Meryl, thank you so much. And I'm very grateful for your leadership and the foundation that you continue to build for Black and First Nations and people of color professionals in Canada. Your dedication and commitment as president of CAUFP, of CAUFP is so much appreciated. And I also want to thank you two, the audience, for joining us on this gorgeous summer evening. We truly appreciate that you are taking the time to spend this with us. And more importantly, I'm so freaking excited and amazed at this evening because I get to interact with two presidents who are women and are Black Canadians. And I really, truly believe that we as a collective must continually push forward to change this dynamic so that there's more women and women of color in C-suite and B-suite positions. So as Meryl mentioned, I'm your moderator, Chandran Fernando of Matrix 360. And I'm very thrilled again to welcome our honored guest, Jaqui Parchment, CEO of Mercer Canada. So Jaqui, thank you for sharing with us this evening and leading for excellence. So Jaqui, I'm not sure, you're
Thank
aware.
You so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but I'm a little bit a creative person, right? And I would like to walk with you down memory lane. So with your permission, I would like you to join me to the little Jaqui, as I call it, to the little J years. Are you ready for the little walk with me?
I'm ready. I'm ready for the trip down memory lane.
Perfect. So what I want to do is I want to showcase something for you. Let's see if this works. So, little Jaqui, right? You see, I'm a firm believer that our younger experiences, hey, Photoshop and apps, it all works out. So I'm a firm believer that our younger experiences shape it and basically helps create our mindsets of today. So I'm a little curious to learn more about, as I call, little J. So what I would like to understand is, where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Jamaica. I had an amazing childhood. So had wonderful parents, wonderful family. Grew up in Kingston, Jamaica, but my father's family is from St. Elizabeth. So if there's anybody who's Jamaican or of Jamaican heritage on the phone, he's from an area that's on the South Coast. And so have amazing memories of, spending time with my cousins and my relatives, on the beach,
nice.
Hanging out, eating mangoes, dripping all over the place, a really, really blessed childhood. I actually moved to Canada when I was 14, and feel really fortunate to have that heritage. Yeah.
Okay. And then on your weekends, what did you like to do and love to do growing up?
As a child?
Yes, as a child.
So
yes.
Listen, it was all about family. Yeah, it was all about family and friends who are like family, basically.
Yeah.
So, not a lot of fancy stuff. My parents were both educators, so we were middle class, but we certainly were not wealthy. So there wasn't anything fancy or sophisticated going on. It was, hanging out either at the beach or at the home of friends and relatives and just being together, right?
Nice.
And so much fun.
Okay, cool. So, I'm probably going to date ourselves here, but when I was a little boy, I used to listen to my Walkman and then my CD player. So I'm going to take a huge assumption here that we were probably doing the same thing. So as little Jaqui, what was in your cassette or CD player at that time when you were growing up that you were bouncing to?
Yes. So Chandran, I got you beat because growing up in Jamaica, when I grew up in Jamaica, you didn't have your own personal, at least in my family, nobody had a personal Walkman or CD player. We had a record player, and it was a family record player. So, so I grew up listening to, what my parents loved to listen to, right? So my mom's from the Eastern Caribbean, so tons of calypso, obsessed with Byron Lee and the Dragoneers, lots of ska, lots of early reggae. And, Jamaicans have this interesting fascination with kind of balladeers, soft rock. So my dad was a huge fan of Shirley Bassey. So that was blasting out loud and proud. The very first record that I got myself was Michael Jackson. Right.
Nice.
And
not Janet.
So obviously, the Jacksons. Obviously, no, this was pre-Janet, man. This was pre-Janet. So love Michael, love the Jacksons, love all kinds of R&B. And then when we moved to Canada, the mandatory listening enforced by my family sort of morphed. By that point, it was Bob Marley, it was reggae. And then again, the strange fascination with balladeers. So there's a lot of Kenny Rogers on Sunday mornings for some very strange reason. Yeah.
Nice.
So eclectic to say the least.
Nice. So when you were growing up, did you know what you wanted to be? Like, what was your dream? What was your thought process around it?
Yeah. So listen, I think like many West Indian children or, young people of color, my world was very limited to what I saw in front of me. So in my family, everybody was either an educator or ran a plumbing store. I do not know why that is. Yeah. So I did not want to run a plumbing store. So my vision for myself was that I was going to be a guidance counselor.
Okay.
That's what I thought. The concept of working in a corporation or being an actuary or being an investment professional or being a CEO, these were things that were just not in my world. And if you told little Jaqui what big Jaqui is doing today, she wouldn't even understand what it is that I do. So sometimes life unfolds in mysterious ways.
Exactly. Right. And that's growth, which is amazing. So, how has Jaqui's childhood shaped her relationships with people who are different from her?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I would say first, having a really secure and happy childhood is always a great foundation to operate off of. So I've been very blessed in that regard. And I think it has shaped how I look at the world. It was a very seismic shift when we made the move from Jamaica to Canada, right? We moved to Oshawa. And at the time, there were like no people. There was no diversity. So I was very, very different from everyone. I didn't think that would be an issue. There were some people who thought it was an issue. I think that move from Jamaica to Canada sort of toughened me up a little bit, and but made me more sympathetic and empathetic to understanding the experience of people who feel that they don't belong for some reason. Because I went from a situation where I was very secure from, a big family on a small island to being a very small fish in a big pond, where nobody looked like me, nobody had my experiences. And that feeling of having to fit in, how do you think about how to fit in? That's something that I think about a lot today, as it applies to everyone and as it applies to our workforce at Mercer. I don't want ever anyone to have that feeling of, oh, I'm a fish out of water.
Yeah, that they don't belong. So, which is great. Because so, thank you for sharing your childhood with us. So let's fast forward now to today. So, what's your life's mission and mantra?
To make a difference, to have a positive impact, to support the people I love and have them support and love me back. And to just be a good person, right? It's not about money or anything fancy. It's about making a difference, and it's about being supported, and it's about being able to support.
Great. So recently I read the Globe and Mail. It was just this past two weekends ago, I believe it was. And it was a editorial that you wrote about belonging, and you started to speak to that. And I was really excited when I read your article, because most leaders, especially C-suite leaders in large multinational companies, don't use that word very often. And to see, one of Canada's powerful leaders actually saying that and showcasing to the world how you're actually going about of creating a framework around belonging was yes, I got to bow. This is amazing. So thank you for that. So I wanted to, explore that just a tiny bit more with you, and really ask you, what does the word belonging mean to you in the concept of the workplace, and then also in the concept of society? Because you did, speak to that. So please do share.
Yeah. So in the context of the workplace, it just simply means that you're comfortable in your own skin. You can bring everything that you are to work. You don't have to be fake. You don't have to be putting up a front. You feel that you're equal to those around you. And you feel that you're working in an organization where you have equal opportunity to do whatever it is that you want to do. So if I step back and think about my own experience, most of my career is at Mercer, not the whole part, but we're very much a meritocracy. But in my early years, I looked at everybody around me, and I looked at all the signals that I was getting. And there are all these tiny, tiny signals that add up to something really powerful. So hearing constantly about, I'm taking this client for golf, or, at our firm, there's a very strong obsession with hockey. So there's something called the Friday morning hockey league, where a lot of the senior men that work at our firm would hang out. And you hear those things, and you think, oh, geez, I'm never going to play on the Friday morning hockey team. I don't like golf. Will I actually be able to connect with clients? Will I actually be able to advance my career? And then when you see nobody who looks like you sort of represented on a stage anywhere, whether it's an internal or an external event, those are signals that, unless you have been the person that feels like they don't speak to you, maybe you don't think about it. But I think it's pretty powerful in making you feel like you can be part of that organization and thrive or not, right? And then in terms of life, it's, again, are you comfortable? Are you happy? Do you feel like you're included, or do you feel like you're a fish out of water, right? That whole idea of being a fish out of water is really, really painful.
Yeah, yeah. And part of the article that you mentioned or you wrote was it's really moving away from the concept of diversity and equity and inclusion to a framework of belonging, right? So what did you mean by that? Because right now, with the anti-racism movement that's happening again, which is finally, and there's really some momentum around it in Canada and in the US. And thank you also for leading that, which we'll get to. Right now, a lot of C-suite and B-suite leaders and some E-suite leaders are circling around this conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion. But they're forgetting that real piece, which you're actually speaking to, belonging. So how can, leaders really reframe their vision and move that I call it the DIE conversation, the DIE conversation, to belonging? How do we move there?
Yeah. So first, I think it's awareness, right? So unfortunately, most C-suite leaders have grown up in companies where it just wasn't an issue for them, right? Because they were part of the Friday morning hockey league, or they were part of the golf pack or whatever. So they, well-intentioned, but they've never had to think about it. So I'm certainly not saying that this concept of belonging replaces, everything else that you'll be doing with respect to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Very important. But I think very often when we talk about diversity, there's this very knee-jerk, okay, I got to go out and find some more Black people to hire,
Yeah.
So that's great. I'm all about hiring more Black people. Let me be clear on that. But what about the Black people you already have? What about the people of color that you already have? What is their journey like? Because if you want a more diverse workforce, the most thing in the world is you start by not having Black people and people of color leave your workforce, right? That's how you grow our representation. If you're bringing lots of new people in, but they're leaving because they don't feel like they fit somehow, you're not going to have a more diverse workforce. So I think this idea of belonging and making your entire workforce feel like they can be comfortable, they're not fish out of water, they're working in a place where they can thrive, where they can bring their whole selves to work, where they don't have to be embarrassed about talking about what they did on the weekend. All of that is really important to increasing diversity. Because if you're pushing people out at the same time as you're pushing people in, you're not going to end up anywhere.
Yeah, 100%. And thank you for sharing that. So now, as CEO of Mercer Canada, and as Meryl mentioned, you lead over 1,000 Canadians in our country. So what is your responsibility? And that's a huge responsibility. So if you had to share with us, what you currently do and where you're at in regards to your responsibilities leading these 1,000 plus professionals, what would that look like?
So listen, I'm very clear on what my role is, and that is to support my colleagues. I am there to serve as leader, right? So to understand what our clients need, to make sure that my team has what they need to be whole and healthy and well upskilled to serve our clients. That's it in its simplest form. So yes, if you look at my day, I try to spend I try to spend maybe a third of my time dealing either directly with clients or client issues, because we're a very client-focused organization. So I can't ask my people to be doing something that I'm not doing or understanding myself. So having a deep understanding and connection to clients and helping open doors for us is really, really important. I really like to spend about a third of my time dealing with people issues, right? So directly connecting with people, thinking about people strategy, and about a third of my time on business strategy, innovation, things like that, right? But I need to be very clear, unfortunately, earlier in my career, I build a lot of hours, and the way many consulting firms still work is, it's you charge clients for the number of hours that you spend on the work. So it's like a law firm or an accounting firm. It's all about billable hours. So I used to be pretty good at the billing gig when I was younger. Now I'm overhead, right? Yeah. So, I'm pretty clear that I'm there to serve my team, open doors for them with clients, help sort through issues if there are any, help them understand client needs, help them have what they need, and make sure that they're healthy and whole and well.
Okay. So what's those triggers that drive you every morning to, I call it the clock of opportunity that goes off, right, every morning for us. So what are those triggers for you that continuously drives you, to walk out that door and be that CEO of this company and lead with a service mindset?
Yeah, so I think it's very important to have clarity of vision, clarity of what your purpose is. So for Mercer, we're really clear on what our purpose is. It is to improve the lives of Canadians, improve the lives of the individuals that work for the corporations and government entities that we serve, right? So create solutions that will make them more healthy, both mentally and physically, contribute to their financial wellness by designing the right programs for their employers, and contribute to a more diverse, more fairly paid workforce, again, for the colleagues that serve our clients. So, that has to be in my North Star, and that sounds really simple, right? But I find that if you remember what your purpose is, what the role of your organization is, and you genuinely focus on that, then it keeps you out of a lot of trouble, right? So, if we start having conversations around, hey, let's launch this solution because we think it'll be trendy and we'll make a lot of money, or, something down that line, that's not our North Star. Like, our North Star is, if we genuinely create solutions and if we genuinely consult in a way that helps our clients help their people, then it's going to be good. So, I owe it to Canada. As you've heard, I came here as a young teenager. It's incredible that sitting where I am now, I have this opportunity to serve. I will never run for political office. You have heard that here.
Yeah.
But if I can, through the work that Mercer does, serve the community by making a workforce that is healthier, that is more financially well, that has better careers, that's pretty fabulous. That's something worth doing, right? Yeah. And if along the way I can support all the colleagues that work for me and help them have better careers and help them be financially and mentally well, that's fantastic. And by the way, if I can also do work directly that impacts the community, like Black Opportunity Fund or the Black North Initiative, that's pretty fabulous. So that's what gets me up in the morning.
Yeah, that's amazing. So it's basically learning how to, or knowing your personal purpose and knowing how to, marry, that's a pretty strong word to use, but really connect the two to your professional world, and then go forward and smile and keep pushing. That's great. That's great.
Yeah. So, I mean, now if I was working for a company that made like nuclear weapons, maybe it would be different, but I don't. Yeah. So I've chosen not to do that. Right.
Yeah.
So,
which is great.
So yeah. It's good.
It's great. So I want to, explore this word impact, because you're sort of speaking to this, and we're going to get to more details about the Black Opportunity Fund and the Black North platform as well. So I want to explore this word with you, and in regards to your journey thus far, and I would like to understand, what was that moment that you have experienced in your career that made a huge impact on you, and why and how? So that's a three-layered question.
Yeah. So that's a three-fer, right? That's complicated. So listen, I mean, I need to be clear with you, Chandran. It's not like I walked into the Canadian workforce and had some grand vision of what my purpose was going to be, and had some grand vision of how my career was going to unfold. I walked into the Canadian workforce. I was very fresh off the boat. And my goal was to have a good job so that I could help my family if I needed to. That's pretty simple, right? Over time, as I started to work and I started to figure out what I enjoyed and what I was good at, I realized that I could actually have an impact. So there's been a bunch of aha moments for me. My background is I studied actuarial science. When I entered the workforce, I was an analyst doing actual work on pension plans. Super not thrilling for me. Thought I would be thrilled with that, was not thrilled with that. And, I had to admit to myself that I wasn't excellent in terms of my technical or programming skills. And that was hard. That was a hard realization. And I actually switched jobs and did a client service job for an insurance company for a while. And what that taught me was that maybe my skill set was more about being able to communicate a complex message in a simple way than about creating the complex algorithm that I would be talking about.
Yeah.
And over time, I've realized how important that is. And it's really important when you're dealing with clients, and it's really important when you're dealing with colleagues. If you can communicate in a way that is clear, that allows people to make the decisions that they need to make, and that they don't have to feel stupid, even if you're talking about really complex stuff, that is a skill that people will pay you for, and that will carry you far. So that was my first aha. And then later on, other ahas, I was really dragged into management by mentors who thought that I could be a good people manager and a good leader when it just didn't occur to me. And it wasn't that I didn't think I was good. I think when you look like we do and you don't see anybody like yourself reflected in the upper ranks, you tend to think that there's some magic. You have to be perfect to be in leadership. And of course, that's not true, right? So I was fortunate I had great mentors who really pushed me into that. But I guess my second aha, realizing that I could do it and that I could step up and that I could be successful and I could make a contribution. And that took a while, I'll tell you. That took a while. And now I guess the aha for me is, I realize how few people of color there are at the table. Yeah. And I know 100% that when I am at the table, it makes a difference. Because that diversity of thought and that diversity of perspective really matters. So there are times where, I'll be in a leadership meeting, either with my team or the North American team that I sit on, where we'll be having conversations. And I consciously feel that if I communicate well enough and if I ask the right questions, I can shift the momentum into a direction where it wouldn't have gone if I wasn't at the table. And that is really important. That is really important.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. And also, I would like to also share with the audience, if you have any questions that you would like to ask Jaqui, if you don't mind just typing them into the chat question box. And our colleague Meryl will definitely reach out and she'll ask that on your behalf. So I want to go to our next question. It's in regards to being one of the only in the room, especially as you climb the ranks into senior leadership and now C-suite leadership. And I'm assuming here that you're on some boards as well. So when you walk in the room and, you are one of or only the one in the room, how do you learn to own your space and your voice so that you are not minimizing the opportunity to represent you, along with making sure that others who are in the room who are not like us knows to welcome us into the framework?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting question. So first, you have to consciously school yourself not to walk into the room thinking, oh my God, nobody else looks like me. Because otherwise you just get freaked out, right? And you just get used to it. So you almost forget that's the reality. Otherwise it becomes hard to function. So the first thing I would say is, I like to start by listening. So if there's a conversation going on, it is unusual that mine would be the first voice to pipe up because, I like to understand different perspectives. And I don't, at one point in my career, I thought, okay, I got to get it out there. I got to get, and I have found that it's more powerful to sit back, to let some of the conversation unfold. And when you have a genuine comment or perspective, then interject. You don't have to be the first person to make a comment. What really matters is making a comment or interjecting in a way that's going to be insightful. And that's just a lot easier. You've listened a little bit, right? So I find that the people in the room who are most strident and out there and banging the table early on very often aren't successful in moving the agenda forward in the way that they want. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, there are realities and there's studies done around how men communicate and how women communicate and how people perceive that communication. So, I've learned to speak in a way that I hope conveys my passion and how strongly I feel without raising my voice. Because if you raise your voice, then you become the angry woman. And you really don't want to be the angry Black woman. I got to tell you, that just makes people shut down. And that may be unfair, but that's reality. So figuring out that line between being assertive, showing your passion, showing how much you care, but doing it in a way that you're not creating that instinctive response that others at the table may have.
Yeah.
And that's a difficult thing to say, but that's the reality. So, I've learned to communicate with impact without taking it up too high, because I know what happens when I do that.
Yeah, 100%. So it's really being aware of the biases and the assumptions that the default culture has about women, people of color, and the other diverse groups as you walk into the room, and not allowing yourself to become their narrative. It's you walk in with your narrative and understand to listen
exactly
and connect it to the whole. So we have a question from one of our audience members, and it's from Tanisha Lewis, and I believe she is a alumni of Waterloo, I believe, as well. So shout out to you, Tanisha. She actually has two questions.
Big up Tanisha, that's amazing.
So there's two questions, but I'm going to, I think they're in the same thread. So it's in regards to exactly what you were speaking to in regards, but specifically in regards to females of color when they're seeking positions in leadership. What's your advice on how a person or a female of color can navigate without, by being assertive, by putting up her hand, by walking in the room and says, I want this opportunity, without being misperceived? How would you answer that?
So it's a great question. So the first thing I would say, Tanisha, is you have to put yourself forward, and you have to not be afraid to put yourself forward. So, I mean, I don't put myself forward and shout, but I'll tell you, I said earlier on that I was dragged into leadership kicking and screaming. Mm-hmm. And there are very definite differences in how men and women view leadership and view opportunity, whether it's applying for a brand new job or applying for a promotion, and how white people and people of color view it. So, and this is not a knock on white men. Big fans of white men, big fan of white men. But white men view everything through the lens of their own potential. And women and people of color, and particularly women who are people of color, think in terms of, okay, I see that there is this list of qualifications. Do I meet all of them? And will it be viewed as presumptive if I go for it and I don't have all of these? And we 100% have to get over that. Mm-hmm. So my current boss, who used to be CEO of Canada, now CEO of North America, he talks openly about the fact that at Mercer, he applied for 4 internal jobs that he didn't get. Right? He's doing pretty damn well. So, but he applied. And what happens when you apply for a role and you don't get it? You just give yourself exposure, right? So, there's only one job to give. So if you don't get it, it's not a tragedy. But very often, if you apply for a different role, or if you apply to a different company and you're granted an interview, even if you don't get that job, you have put down a marker to say, here's what I'm interested in, and to have a conversation where you get to display something about yourself. And so even if you don't get it that day, you're putting down a marker that maybe down the road, if it's at your existing company, maybe something else will come up. Or if it's at a company you don't know, who knows? Maybe 2 years down the road, that interviewer remembers you for something else. So I think we have to start approaching opportunity similar to how our colleagues who are Caucasian and who are men doing that. That is 100% really, really important. Yes. I see it every single day. Yeah. Every single day.
Thank you for sharing that. And hopefully, Tanisha, she was able to answer your question as well. And then a connection to her question is in regards to, have you ever felt the impact of racism and any sort of discrimination in your career that had made you kind of like, whoa, stop in your tracks and then question your ability to say, do I continue? And that's also from Tanisha, but I kind of added a little flavor into there because it's connected to another question of mine. So I think Tanisha saw my questions. So go ahead, Jaqui.
So it's another really good question. So listen, I work for a firm where we have a meritocracy. So overt, you can't do this because you're a Black woman, or like that was never ever on. I think what's really important to know is that even in a meritocracy, these differences between how people of color and white people view success and view applying, and women and men, it's so critical. It's such a barrier. I will say that things have really changed since I became CEO. Mm-hmm. And what happens a lot, and it happens like it's just unbelievable, is I'll be at a conference or I'll be at some kind of a meeting, and I don't lead with, "Hey, I'm Jaqui Parchment and I'm CEO of Mercer." But, often my title will come up or I'll be introduced. And the number of times that I hear, "You don't look like a CEO," or "Really, you?" with this kind of expression of surprise. And you marry that with the expression that all Black, the experience that all Black people have had, where you get mistaken, right? So I live in a nice building. I don't look like anybody in the building. I've literally been handed garbage to carry out because people think that I'm the maid, right? And that's happened more than once. So that is not you. Any person of color will be able to tell you that story. So, you have a day where you wake up and you get asked to take out the garbage, and then you go to a meeting and people keep saying you don't look like a CEO. At a certain point, it does really wear on you, and you think, God, because initially I'm a self-reflective person. Sometimes I think, oh God, am I not dressed properly? Like, what is it? And then you have to go, no, silly. It's because you're not a tall white guy in a blue suit. Because I never wear blue suits. And you just kind of have to get over it, right? So it's tiring. And it's an additional level of stress that we have to carry. But listen, I love what I do, and I get to have an impact. So you got to believe me when I tell you, I'm just not putting up my hand to have a seat at the table anymore. I'm fighting to have that seat at the table. It's great to have that seat at the table. So, my hope is that if there are enough of us that have a seat at the table, that, people will stop saying you don't look like a CEO or act horrified when you say that you're the CEO, or think, it's more likely that you're there to take out the garbage and be the CEO. I think that's pretty important stuff.
Oh, great. Thank you for sharing that. That has hit a lot of, lot of knowledge for most folks. There's three other questions, which are sort of, I'm going to combine them all three. So
I have one question as well, Chandran, that
Okay.
Somebody texted because they've dialed in. But this is from Mumbo, who is a fellow actuary. And she just wanted Jaqui to talk about how being a Black actuary has actually shaped your career and gotten you to be, in the leadership position that you are today. And maybe if you can just talk a little bit about, if there were any struggles, because we know that there's not a lot of Black folks who are actuaries in the business. So you can just talk a little bit about your experience or give folks some advice on how to navigate that.
Perfect. That's a great question.
Okay. You should know that you are really in demand. Really in demand, I got to tell you. Because,
so send your resume to mercer.ca.
They're seriously, there are, myself and our competitor, anyone who's forward thinking needs to diversify the workforce, right? With everything that's going on. And we know that corporations are desperate to do that. So I think it's a very positive thing between you and me right now. I would say, again, it's about the expectation, right? Like, nobody thinks, people think that you're this rare, exotic bird. And you just want to go and do your thing and have a great career and make an impact. I think for anyone these days, the opportunity to kind of take the technical skill that you have and figure out how to communicate those really important technical skills and your findings in a way that's understandable, whether that's, to the C-suite or to your leadership or to your clients, that is a skill that people will really, really pay money for. So, finding a firm that will let you be your true self and figuring out a way to do that, I think is pretty powerful. But no, these days, If you can't be yourself where you are, you're in demand. So it's not so much about do you fit in? It's about can you work? Where do you have the best opportunity to be really comfortable?
Yes, that's amazing. Amazing. So the three questions, I want to combine them into one because I'm being mindful of the time because I want to really, move to the Black Opportunity Fund and the Black North Initiative as well. So being the CEO of a male-dominated industry, which is very connected to the previous question, how did you, how were you able to navigate this? Because yes, you spoke about mentors, but also when you get to a certain level, it's about the sponsorship. It's about that individual or that group of people who have a power of influence, as I call it, tapping your shoulder and speaking to you, and then also speaking about you in those rooms where generally we're not invited at that stage, right? So what's your advice and in regards to, one, creating or getting someone to sponsor you and someone to recognize you who is a person of influence or person of power, we'll say, in regards to the corporate world, so he or she can see your value add. And B to that question is, when do you know to put your hand up or apply for that opportunity in senior leadership based on the qualifications on the merit in regards to whether you have 80%, 60%, or 40% to push yourself forward?
Yeah. So the sponsorship question is a really good one. We talk a lot about mentorship and how our community needs mentorship. What our community needs is sponsorship. It's people to say, I believe in Chandran and I'm going to fight for Chandran. So listen, part of it was luck, to be honest. I had, I was in an industry that was growing where there was a talent drought. And in addition to having some technical skill, I could communicate. And so having a skill set that is in demand is actually pretty helpful. It means that people will be more likely to look around and say, okay, who can help me with this? And reach for you. I would also say you need to recognize that it is not necessarily and probably not going to be a Black person or a person that looks like you, because right now there are just not enough of us in power, right? So all of my mentors in the early days, all of my sponsors in the early days were white men. I think understanding there's a quid pro quo with sponsorship, and I don't mean that in a creepy way. Yeah. It basically is something like, you work like hell on my accounts, you make me look good, you enable me to go home at a reasonable hour, and in return, I will fight for you and I will create opportunity for you. So part of the deal with sponsorship is you need to be able to figure out pretty quickly who is going to earn the right to be your sponsor. So you don't want to invest a lot of time working your butt off for somebody who isn't going to sponsor you, or doing something for somebody who isn't going to sponsor you. So, kind of looking around, understanding, who's done that for other people at the firm, and making sure that, if you're going to invest that effort, that the quid pro quo on the other side is earned. That was a really important lesson for me, because if you're good and you do great work, there will be a number of people that want to work with you. And so you gently navigate yourself to finding more time to work with the people that will be sponsors. You don't have to be even with everybody. That's my perspective.
Okay.
Right?
So I love that you share that, because I truly believe, because I'm in the talent management and workplace strategy side of business as well, for the commercial real estate space. And what I believe is every person I meet, and I sort of learn how to unpack what they offer, is I truly believe that each one of us possesses gifts and value adds to someone else or to an organization. It's just learning how to tap into those gifts and those value adds, and then learning how to showcase that. So, and then because now we have or as humans, we all possess biases and assumptions about each other, right? That is a human fact, unfortunately. And sometimes those assumptions and biases are steeped in negative connotations. It's specifically around women and people of color. So how do you, what would you recommend as a person of color and the people of color who are listening in right now, and even the females who are listening in right now, what would you recommend, where they can still remain authentic, understand their value, what they're able to bring to the table, and push forward, and be able to still not fall into that trap mindset where you then are labeled as, that negative person of being loud and being aggressive and, pushing too much. How do you find that fine balance? What would you say?
Yeah. So listen, I think it's really, really important to assume positive intent, right? So if you walk into the workforce and you think, oh my God, everybody's going to be biased, this is going to be a problem. I think there's a difference between explicit racism and what is built into the system. So what I'm talking about in terms of the differences between how people of color and white people and men and women approach opportunity, that is systemic. Yes. That is systemic. And even in a great organization that's a meritocracy, that's going to be a problem. So, I assume positive intent unless somebody shows me otherwise. And that means that you're going to be open and maybe you're going to have some nasty surprises, but it's going to be better than the other way. Over time, people sort of show you their true colors, right? So if you assume positive intent, you notice that you're doing a lot, you're not getting the payback. I think it's also really important to know how valuable we are and to value ourselves. So very often we twist ourselves into knots. How do we fit in? Is this? Sometimes you can assume positive intent. It's just not working out. And sometimes it's just not the place for you. And you got to find a place that will let you be you. And I will say that there was, I started out my career thinking, oh my God, do I have to learn to play golf? This is going to be a disaster. Yeah. God forbid, do I have to play hockey? Do I have to play hockey like a man? Like none of that was going to happen, right? Yeah. So at a certain point, I just kind of released it. And I thought, okay, I'm going to be myself. And if that's not good enough, maybe this isn't the place for me.
Okay.
Right? So I think we need to first assume positive intent, trust a little bit, but also recognize that we shouldn't have to twist ourselves into knots anymore. If we got to do that, maybe we're just not at the right firm. And we got to find a place where you don't have to do that, because who wants to do that?
100%. So I want to share a quick story when I was in university, just, a few years, I would say probably a few years ago, right? And a couple of my friends and I, we were really focused on creating programs for Black and Brown youth who lived in the urban core of Detroit, because I went to school in Windsor. And what we found out that, and it still exists today, there's two societies, right? And so what we wanted to do, we wanted to, speak to some leaders that we truly believed as, true guides for us. And two of those leaders was Dr. King's daughter, Bernice King, and John Lewis. So we, young, bright, minds didn't have really any barriers in our heads, like where anything is possible for us. We jumped in the car and we drove to Atlanta and we stalked John Lewis. And, I was fortunate enough to meet him. And we kind of like took, we kind of hijacked his walk. And we said, Mr. Lewis, we want to talk to you. We're starting this organization, this platform, and we want to know, is this the right thing to do? Because we think it is, but we're also not sure how to start. And he gave us some great words of advice. And, and why this story has come up in my framework is because it's what's happening right now. And one thing what he shared with me is he said, Chandran, just remember you're part of this family. And what you are offering, you have a lot to offer. So you're carrying the baton of knowledge in a sense. And don't let anyone try to diminish that fire of you. Just continue going and just remember, pass it on, right? So, and that was the first time that I realized that, oh, wow, I actually do have some, some potential of helping move and understand that I probably have this power of influence. So now I share with you, Jaqui, what was the first time in your life when you realized that you had the power to change something or do something great and meaningful for yourself and from the community and for society as a whole?
Yeah, so that's a big question. I think maybe the first time that I started to manage people, which would have been in my early 30s, you start to realize how much individual impact you can actually have. And hopefully I was doing things that had a positive influence before then, but that was really the first moment for me.
Great. So let's just jump right into that then, right? As a woman of color, as a leader, as a Canadian power horse, as I call it, a power broker, as I call it, for Canada, because you're leading one of Canada's top firms. How did you get involved with the Black Opportunity Fund, and how did you get involved with the Black North Initiative too? Two great platforms that are basically setting and planting the seeds for systemic change in Canada for the Black community and also for people of color and our First Nations brothers and sisters. Like, how did you get started, and what continues to fuel you to push forward?
Yeah, so listen, so fortunate and blessed to be on the steering committee of BOF and to actually be on the board of BNI. And really, there's a fairly small, unfortunately, number of business leaders that tend to do panels and discussions around the topic of diversity. So I met, I met Dennis Mitchell, sat on a couple of panels with him, know what a leader he is in the community. He asked me if I'd be willing to get involved in Black Opportunity Fund. I met some of the other members of the steering committee and was just blown away by the collaboration, just the real imperative to make change, the commitment to the community, and the fact that our whole strategy is predicated on listening to those in the community that are making change in the grassroots and respecting that. So I am really, I said earlier that I come from a family of educators and people who own plumbing businesses, but more to the point of coming from a family of educators. I'll tell you a story. My dad very sadly passed away last year. He was a teacher. And a few weeks before he passed away, one of his students that he had taught 65 years before, 65 years, who lived in the United States, flew to Canada, rented a car, drove to Toronto so he could sit with him for a morning and say goodbye. And I asked myself, how much impact would you have to have for somebody to do that for you? So I recognize the importance that people that are working directly with our youth, directly with people that are ill, directly with our people in the community can have. And I want to do whatever I can in my small way to help. So that's what's driving me with Black Opportunity Fund. Black North, obviously, I'm a leader in corporate Canada. Again, I met Wes through one of these committees, and we had some side conversation and was really excited about how he was envisioning trying to make change, sort of C-suite leadership. And I know firsthand how important that is, and I know firsthand how hard that is. So of course I wanted to be a part of that and to do whatever I can to help. And the reality is, to see change at that level, I think it's incredibly important that we have diverse voices that are sharing their perspectives. And so there's not a ton of Black women CEOs that can share that perspective. So, it's my responsibility to be there.
Yeah, no, 100%. So do you mind, because I'm being mindful of the time, so if we could take maybe 5 to 6 more minutes of it, if you could just share a little bit more in regards to, for the folks who are not aware of what the Black Opportunity Fund is, if you could share more about it and how they can also get involved and help, create this a sustainable investment for the Black community?
Yeah, so Black Opportunity Fund, we are hoping and aspiring to be the largest endowment in the world that will be dedicated to funding Black causes and run by Black people. That's what we're trying to do. So, right now there is no pool of capital that Black nonprofits can access in a sustained multi-year way that will allow them to do the work that they want to do. And we want to change that. So we are, our strategy involves first and foremost listening to the community. I'm co-leading a work stream on community engagement. And so we're starting lots of one-on-ones. We've already started with community grassroots organizations, and we're going to be having some town halls to engage a community and understand what they need. Same time, we're reaching out to large corporations who, by the way, are pretty motivated right now to try to do anything they can to combat anti-Black racism. And really interesting how easily we get those meetings. And also lots of conversation with the government about getting funding from them. So the idea is that we will build this fund and we will use it not to create our own charity or our own businesses, but to scale up and fund existing grassroots organizations and eventually invest in Black businesses. So that's what BOF is about.
Okay.
And if you want to get involved, first and foremost, go to blackopportunityfund.ca. Send us an email, look at the website, and would love to see if we can get you involved.
Perfect. And then the Black North Initiative that you're part of the board. A quick 30 seconds, how people can get involved and how they could get their leaders to be involved and sign the pledge and make those commitments to get more Black people and people of color and First Nations into senior suite and C-suite and B-suite positions.
Yeah, so we are super excited that 200 organizations have already signed, right? 3 of the 5 big banks, all the big insurance companies, big telcos. Very proud that my own firm obviously has signed, a number of other consulting firms and accounting firms. So very broad representation. If your company is not signed, talk to your leaders and say, hey, this is a way to not just make a statement. I think making the statement is important, but I can tell you that what is outlined in the BNI pledge, most corporations aren't doing.
Yeah.
So if we can get companies to commit and hold their leaders to account, and at Mercer, for example, the bonuses of my leaders are going to be on the line if we don't meet our commitments. That's what we want. So if we want change at the C-suite and at the board level, that's what we need to do. So you can talk to your leaders and ask them to sign the pledge, ask them to learn more. Wes has a whole machine. Wes Hall, who I know has been a former CAUFP guest, he's a force of nature. Somebody who's Marlon. There's 2 Marlons that are involved in both BNI and Black Opportunity Fund, and I can't remember the last name of which one it is, but there's an individual who's actually managing pledges and community corporation outreach. So would be great to get in touch with Wes and his team and just say, hey,
where do we
would love
sign?
to hear more so I can provide this information to my leaders.
100%.
Where do we sign? Yeah.
As you know, we probably need to do a part 2 with you because there's so much knowledge that you have to share, and I do thank you. But one last question, and then we'll definitely thank you for sharing with us, is if you could summarize Jaqui in 2 words or 2 adjectives that will continue to lay the foundation so others can follow to continue to do better, what would that be?
So I hope one of those words is happy, because I think if you're not happy in whatever you're doing, that's not a foundation for anything. And I hope that people would associate the word excellence with me, right? Because I really, there's lots of different ways to make a difference. I'm not a teacher, I'm not a politician, but in my own way, I want to make a difference, and it's easier to blaze that trail if what you do, you do well. So that is certainly an aspiration that I have.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Jaqui. So as a guest of Leading for Excellence, that's one of the reasons why we chose you, is we truly believe from our hearts and from our minds that you are actually laying the bricks and a great foundation for us and the generations who are coming to follow. So truly, from my bottom of my heart, from the audience's heart, and for the individuals who will be listening to this recording in the future, thank you for gracing us with your knowledge, your presence, the words of wisdom, and sharing, that little small insights of your childhood. See, this is the black and white picture. Like that one. And also your current experience with us. And for the audience, if you do have any questions or would like to continue the conversation, please do reach out to CAUFP, Meryl and her team, or please do connect with Jaqui on LinkedIn. My last two wishes for everyone is to please spread the word on how to get involved with the Black Opportunity Fund and the Black North Initiative. These two platforms will help change the landscape for Canada, where Black professionals are recognized, the Black community is recognized for the contributions that they have done and what you have done for Canada and for the world. So use your megaphones, use your social media platforms, and get involved, put your hand up, continue to lead with excellence. As I mentioned earlier, that we all have gifts to offer. Find out what your value add is, what Jaqui mentioned, and hold on to it and allow it to evolve as you pass the baton on of knowledge. So thank you again from my heart to your heart. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you for sharing your time during the summer evening, and peace, and let's connect later. Take care. Thanks, Jaqui.
Thank you so much for the invite. It was great to be with you. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. Take care.